right, good morning, everybody. Here for the 40th episode of Pick and Pop. It's Peter Marzano. We'll be talking about Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. It went on last night, and then, of course, Game 6 of the West Finals happening tonight between Golden State and Houston. And, of course, yesterday, probably the most entertaining game of the series so far as back and forth. There was a little bit more of that, but still the nature of the game was pretty similar to what we've seen in the first 5 games, in the sense that it was a home team that was in control. The only difference with Game 6 is that it was Boston who got off to the good start. They actually, as I was saying, it would make things tough for Cleveland. Cleveland found a way to overcome it because Boston set the tone of this game early on. They had a 5-point lead at the end of the first quarter, were up by as many as 6. And as soon as the second quarter began, just a few bad possessions allowed Cleveland to kind of get into their game, and then they outscored Boston 34-18 in the second, just dominated that second quarter. And it was really where LeBron James was getting help. He was getting help from people other than Kevin Love, because it wasn't Kevin Love in this game who left after just playing 5 minutes, collided with Jason Tatum. They actually both hit their heads against each other, but it was Love that got the worst of the collision. And his status for Game 7 is currently unknown. And I think if he doesn't play Game 7, that the Celtics have absolutely no reason to not win that game. But I have to give credit where credit is due to the role players of the Cleveland Cavaliers for stepping up in his absence. And most notably, 2 of the 3 guys who really showed up last night were 2 of them that we haven't really seen a whole lot, especially in the series, but in the postseason in general. And really for all 3, it was an extremely welcome contribution for Cleveland. You get 20 points out of George Hill, looking like he did during his Indiana Pacers days. You have Jeff Green having 14 off the bench, arguably the best game that he's had this postseason. Larry Nance with 10 points and 7 rebounds off the bench and 5 of 5 shooting, and he was playing more than Tristan Thompson down the stretch. And I think Ty Lue was just kind of rewarding him with how well he played on both ends of the floor yesterday. So LeBron James got his help, but make no mistake, an assist shy of a 46-point triple-double. This man was on fire last night. Truly a special performance. And even as a Celtics fan, with it being frustrating to see this happen, to see my team have a chance to go to the finals and then to have that taken away by the best player in the world, it's frustrating when you're watching it. But I think last night was one of those examples to where, especially if your team wasn't involved, just sit back and appreciate greatness. And that's really what it was. 46 minutes for LeBron James last night, 17 of 33 from the field, 5 of 7 from downtown, 46 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 steals, and a block. There isn't much more to say. I know around a month and a half ago, I came out with a video discussing why I believe he is the greatest player of all time. And last night was just another one of those performances that you can add to the list. And it has specifically been in elimination games that we have seen this form of LeBron James. And I think while if you're the Boston Celtics, you have to be feeling pretty good in the sense that you're going home where you're undefeated this postseason. The Cavs specifically have not played well at all at the TD Garden. It isn't like the last series for the Celtics were against Philadelphia. They were winning close games at home, but the Celtics have dominated Cleveland at home in this series. So in that sense, you have to be feeling pretty good. But at the same time, LeBron James in a Game 7 is extremely, extremely scary. And I really do think that the Boston Celtics have to be aware of that there can be another one of these performances on the horizon. And as the Celtics proved last night, they can win a game in which LeBron puts up numbers like this. They did in Game 2 when he had a 42-point triple-double. But it's about making sure that George Hill doesn't score 20 points and gets to the free throw line 6 times. It's about making sure that you limit Jeff Green and Kyle Korver and Larry Nance off the bench, especially if we're getting into a situation to where the Cavs are without Kevin Love, who, while the Cavs love these role-playing performances that they've gotten, they've seemed to have only gotten them this postseason when they're playing at the Quicken Loans Arena. Kevin Love, on the other hand, is one of those players that is a lot more proven in that regard, has shown up big in road playoff games. He did specifically this year. Game 2 against Toronto had an incredible game that was a big part of them winning. He has, of course, shown up big on the road for them in the playoffs in the past few years. So that is a big part of it. Are they going to get those role-playing contributions away from the Quicken Loans Arena in what will be an incredibly hostile and electric environment? As far as the Boston Celtics go, they really just needed more out of Al Horford last night. He had 9 rebounds, but only 6 points to go with that. I thought I was going to sneeze. I still might. Sorry about that. But last night was one of those games to where you would want to see Al Horford score, especially because they got 2 really big performances out of Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier, dropping 27 and 28 respectively. Terry Rozier was 6 of 10 from 3, one of those nights where he was shooting really well, finally showing up on the road. Jason Tatum had a really rough start, but kind of got a hang of it in the second half. Still ended up shooting 7 of 13 for 15 points. And I remember hearing them talking about it when I was watching the game last night, specifically Van Gundy and Mark Jackson talking about Jason Tatum's performance and if this was on him. And while I think he should have come out more aggressive in the first half, I think the more of it is offensively on Al Horford. I think with the way the Cavaliers were playing this game in the second quarter and beyond, that is where, if you're the Boston Celtics, you would have liked to see some adjustments with Al Horford running those plays to where there's some ball movement to start the possession, but once the shot clock hits 10 to 11 seconds, you give the ball to Al Horford in the post and make him put his head down and make a play. And while he has been excellently defended by Tristan Thompson throughout the series, who has limited that, whereas last series and against Milwaukee, Horford kind of had his way in that regard, you still need to try and get him going in that sense, because that is how you get a guy like Al Horford going offensively. You can't count on him to be hitting outside shots to get going. It's kind of where you want it to go the other way around. Get him a few plays to where he can get into the paint, maybe get some contact, and then maybe draw a few plays to where you're doing pick and pops to have him being the guy shooting the ball. So I think that is where offensively the biggest problem was. It's also that Aaron Baines, who was giving you at least upper single digits for most of the series, getting you around 7 to 10 points. It's a goose egg last night and only had 1 field goal attempt. So also, you're going to want to see more plays run for Aaron Baines. I think specifically last night, there was just a lack of lobs going into the paint, which is something that we've seen in this series and throughout this postseason when the Celtics are playing well, is that there's a lot of alley-oop plays. There's a lot of that in transition, and there was none of that last night. There was none of Horford and Baines rushing to the basket to try and make any of that happen. So those are adjustments that I would expect to see in Game 7, especially if there's no Kevin Love and the Cavs are down a big man in that regard. Marcus Smart, Marcus Morris both had 10 points off the bench. You may see a bit more Greg Monroe, who played 5.5 minutes last night, but I'm not sure. I do think that there's a chance that they put Marcus Morris back into the starting lineup. But I also think that the Celtics are confident with the system with Baines in the starting lineup. They just need to figure out a way to return to what they had going in Game 5 and in Games 1 and 2. And going home, it's likely that they'll be able to figure that out. I personally think that the Celtics are going to win Game 7. I think that they have dominated Cleveland too much on their home floor. I think the Cleveland's role players are too much of a question mark to really count on them putting on performances like that in Game 7. But also you can't count out LeBron James and the fact that he really could do anything in this upcoming game. So that's what kind of makes it scary for the Boston Celtics. But I think they're still in a good position. I think how they played 3 of the 4 quarters last night puts them in a good position to succeed here in Game 7. So it should be a really, really exciting game there. Should also be a very exciting finish to the series out west between the Rockets and the Warriors. Of course, Chris Paul with that hamstring will not play tonight in Game 6. It's quite likely that he wouldn't play in a Game 7 or Game 1 of the NBA Finals as well. And this is a really, really tricky spot for the Houston Rockets. Warriors are heavy favorites tonight, facing elimination. They're at home. They've not faced elimination in the Western Conference since Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals in 2016. They actually faced elimination 3 games in a row and won all 3 of them, coming back from that deficit to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. But this time they're facing elimination against a team that is going to have to figure out how to do it without Chris Paul. What I'd expect to see is Eric Gordon in the starting lineup. You're going to see more Gerald Green. And one person that I may expect to see a bit more for the Houston Rockets is ISO Joe Johnson, somebody that really has not played a whole lot at all this postseason. This is the kind of situation where losing Chris Paul, you have to start with a bigger point guard. You're going to have to see more of those rotation players like Gerald Green off the bench. Joe Johnson is somebody that can keep the floor spaced, has plenty of experience, and of course is also somebody that can go up against anybody in isolation. So I think that with the way the Rockets have played this series, especially with a lot of isolation, it would not surprise me at all to see Joe Johnson getting some playing time tonight. But I think it's going to be very tough for the Rockets to find a way to beat Golden State on the road for a second time, especially after limiting them to under 100 points for the last 2 games. So it'll be a really exciting game to watch. I work 12-7, so I get off right before the game, and it'll be exciting to see how this pans out with the Rockets looking to make it back to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1995 when they beat the Orlando Magic, whereas the Golden State Warriors are looking to force a Game 7 to keep their streak, looking to make it to their 4th straight finals. So that'll be interesting. I hope this goes 7 to have 2 conference finals going 7. That would be really exciting. I'm actually going to try and find out the last time that happened, because I feel like it's been a really long time since we've seen something like that. We've seen a few years to where one series will go 7 and one series will go 6. That most recently happened back in 2016 when the Toronto Raptors pushed the Cavaliers to 6 games, and the Thunder, of course, took the Warriors to 7. But, I'm scrolling back, and I have not found a year yet where both series have gone 7. And I'm going to go back until I find one. But it has been a really long time. Wow. If it has even ever happened. Because at this point, I'm not sure. Back into the 80s now, as I'm trying to, find out this rather pointless statistic. But I think that just alone, so it's been since 1979 when the Bullets beat the Spurs in 7 and the Supersonics beat the Suns in 7 to go to the finals. That is the last time that both conference finals have gone 7 games. So that just speaks to the NBA at this point not really having the ultra competitive conference finals in both conferences. It just typically doesn't coincide in one year. But if the Warriors win tonight, that is what we will see for the first time in nearly 40 years. So that'll be exciting. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Pick and Pop. Make sure to subscribe for more, and I'll be back tomorrow talking about the outcome of this game and what we have to look ahead for Game 7 between the Cavs and the Celtics. Have a good day.